or happy whatever time of day it is to you, wherever you may be. We have our speaker from Germany has just joined us and is working on getting his computer up and running. Welcome to Michael Kreil. He is a data scientist from Berlin who is working with a open data journalism agency and is looking at how to tell stories with data. But he's been working with data science for quite a number of years now, and he's been working extensively with Twitter the last few years, looking at the way that people are tweeting and looking at these bots versus humans. So I'm sure you've read the brief for the talk, and I think Michael is ready to take it away. So with no further ado, welcome to Hope, Michael, and people are not bots.
Hello. Yeah, my name is Michael. Today, for security reasons, will not have a camera. That's just a joke. We have technical problems here. But the slides will be enough. And it's quite hard because actually right now it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I drank a lot of energy drinks to be, fit enough to give this talk. And as you can see, people are not bots. I research at Delegitimize social movements. I also added an URL where I upload the slides additionally. So if there's any kind of data or question, I will add that to this GitHub repo. About me, I'm a data scientist and a data journalist. Worked for the last 10, 20 years and different areas on data. You can see some of my works, usually about maps or, what I really love is working with huge amounts of data. And when in the end of 2016, all these stories came up that social bots trying to influence elections and the Brexit referendum, I really fell in love with the idea because it is a perfect story for me. I could fetch the data, analyze it, make interactive data visualization, and explain to the public what social bots are actually about. But unfortunately, this was a big failure because I was not able to reproduce the scientific papers behind that. So what I do now is basically tell you the story of my failure, and I think it's important to share. To begin with, it is the question, what are social bots? So basically, social bots are automated accounts. We all know that, for example, the Arduino kit, where you fetch it into your plan, for example, and it's tweeting automatically if it's thirsty and stuff like that. So that's of course is an automated account. And you probably know things like Instagram. You can connect it to Twitter. Whenever you post a new photo on Instagram, you will get an automatic tweet, or your account will automatically tweet that. There's other ways of connecting your Twitter account to other automation, like the PlayStation Network. Check out my new broadcast for Fortnite or whatever. And here's an example of how you can connect it to Facebook, that whenever you post something on Facebook, your account will automatically tweet something. And this automation is quite useful. And I think that's actually something special about the Twitter platform, that it's easy to use the API to fetch something in. And also New York Times is using that, using tools like Social Flow. They themselves say it's Social Flow automatically delivers content to target audiences as soon as relevant conversation are gaining momentum. So to be clear, the New York Times Twitter account is also a social bot, and we have to keep that in mind when we talk about social bots. So to summarize that, we have things like Instagram, Facebook, piping it to Twitter, also if this and that, PlayStation, Bitly. I saw something like McDonald's campaign in Japan. I think they used heavy automation, but also media like Washington Post, the New York Times, BBC, Guardian, and so on. Basically, every newspaper is having some kind of mechanism where the content management system is piping something into Twitter. So one thing that I want to make clear is that sock puppets are not social bots. A lot of people are mixing that up. So just to be sure, to explain that for example, You probably heard about the Russian Internet Research Agency used sock puppets to impersonate people or groups. So for example, the Tennessee Republicans, or here's a Twitter account from a Pamela Moore that probably never existed. Twitter deleted up to 5,000 accounts of the Internet Research Agency. But these are sock puppets. These are not social bots. But there's more, because there's also some kind of a fantasy of human-like social bots. So there's rumors like that they can mimic human behaviors, or one sentence I really like is elusive bots could easily infiltrate a population of unaware humans and manipulate them to affect the perception of reality. These are quotes from a scientific paper from 2015. Now we have 2020, and in 6 years, no one was able to demonstrate this kind of sophistication. So when I talk to other people about machine learning, it's hard enough to have an somehow interactive chatbot, but having an army of human-like bots, that's actually more fantasy. Probably it's a narrative from James Cameron. These Terminator, they look like flesh and blood, but under the skins they are machines. That's actually the same narrative. And here the picture, Terminator, the rise of the machine. Well, it's quite similar to the scientific paper, the rise of the social bot. And by the way, the next page in this journal is this picture of Twitter birds looking like the Terminator. But it's still a fantasy of James Cameron. Actually, you can make a movie out of that. The rise of the social bots. They mimic human behavior, infiltrate the population, and manipulate our perceptions of reality. This is not science. This is fiction. Or especially if you're talking about that we need a scientific base for these claims, I would call that even bullshit. But what the scientific consensus of the community is that social bots are accounts that use automation. Now let's have a look at these social bots. For example, during the Brexit referendum, there was an article from New Scientist, beware of the Brexit bots, the Twitter spam out to swing our vote. This whole article is based on a scientific paper from the University of Oxford, from the Comprop, from the Computation Propaganda Project. This paper specifically is from Philip Howard and Ben Scolani. And so if you want to prove that social bots influence the Brexit referendum, you need to do two things. First of all, you have to show that they actually have any kind of influence, and also that you found bots. So how do they prove that these accounts had influence? Well, basically, they just counted hashtags. And that's a problem, because reading a hashtag has no political influence on you. And also, the hashtag itself is not enough. You need the context. So for example, I could tweet something like, I support Brexit, or tweet, I oppose Brexit. It's the same hashtag, but two different meanings. And if you look deeper into Twitter, you find a lot of messages like this one. I translated it to South Korean. It's, I'm your biggest fan and I love you, heart, heart, heart. Hashtag Justin Bieber, hashtag Pokemon Go, hashtag Brexit, hashtag Games of Thrones. So just counting the number of hashtag Brexit is not a good base on calculating the influence. Yeah, for many reasons. I could talk longer about that. So for example, if a hashtag is trending, a lot of spammers are using that. So for example, like Justin Bieber, hashtag Game of Thrones, hashtag Brexit. And the spam is not political opinion. And also just having a hashtag that is strong doesn't mean that it has political influence. In that case, like, for example, K-pop fans might be the most political influential group in the world. Yeah, because they can push hashtags. But the core of the paper is, how did they find the bots? So these bad Russian bots who manipulated us. And as I mentioned before, some scientists even believe that they can mimic human behavior. So what is this really smart criterion to find them? And the University of Oxford is doing this. We define heavy automation as accounts that post at least 50 times a day. That is the basic definition of social bots, and that's not a good criterion. Just tweeting 50 times a day, if you just have, for example, a conversation with somebody else, then Twitter becomes some kind of a chat client. So if you look deeper into this criterion, I can name you a lot of other accounts who are even more active than just 50 tweets per day. So for example, Starbucks, 150 tweets, British Airways, 280 tweets per day. The journalist Glenn Greenwald even has more than 50 tweets per day. And Cory Doctorow, thank you for the keynote, is 3 times stronger than a social bot, 150 tweets per day. And also New York Times, CNN, NBA, NFL, Reuters, and so on. So it would be quite interesting if these news media, if the journalist would check if they talk about a social bot paper, if the news media themselves might be categorized as social bot. I can show you examples from the Brexit referendum, for example. The CNN used the hashtag Brexit, Reuters used the hashtag Brexit, and I found a tweet from Cory Doctorow using the hashtag Remain. This would all be social bots who try to politically influence the public opinion. So I would call that bullshit. I'm sorry to say that, but this paper does not reach any scientific value. It is neither proved influence nor have it found social bots. And if the New Scientist, publish an article about that, they should check that if probably they themselves would be called social bots. Okay, but that was the beginning. Everybody knows that the idea of social bots really came up during the US presidential election. And there was a lot of articles about that from New York Times, BBC, Vice, The Washington Post. In the end of 2016, beginning 2017, I checked what kind of news articles I can find. And these are, I'm not sure, I think 40 articles I found. Every dot represents one article. And here is the media. So for example, BBC published 3 articles and stuff like that. And then I read every single article and checked what is the scientific basis of that. And this is the result. So most articles used the paper from Oxford. Then the second most used paper is from Southern California, Indiana, and the third one is from Berkeley and Swansea. And we can have a look at all of these 3 papers. And the first one from Oxford is also from Ben Scolani in Howard. And of course, they also redefine a high level of automation. It's accounts that post at least 50 times a day, and I'm sorry to say that that's bullshit. That's not science. But on the bottom, Berkeley Swansea, that they might have a better approach. And it is hard. This paper is very complex, especially their bot detection method is very complex. I could explain you how it works, and I would use a lot of swear words. So I point you to that blog article. It's from Mike Hearn. He's one of the very, very few people in the world who has actually fought bots on social media platforms. As a member of the Google abuse team from 2010 to 2013, he spent a large amount of time working on anti-spam and anti-automation platforms. So he basically, pulled this scientific paper apart, and his conclusion is it's the most irresponsible abuse of math I've seen for a long time. But it's not just about how they define social bots. It's also the problem how they calculate the actual influence of them, and then you can see that the scientists obviously had problems on understanding causality. So, for example, they had the idea if in a state, for example, there's more support for Trump, then there will also be more votes for Trump. And that makes totally sense. That's a causality. And also, if there's more support for Trump, that means there are more tweets for Trump. That makes sense too. So if there are some kind of social bots pushing more tweets out there, so that means that in the causality, it will also create more votes. They don't even consider that causality doesn't work in every direction and that not every voter is on Twitter. But it doesn't matter. A paper is good when it's creating huge numbers, so they suggest that 3.23 percentage points of the actual vote could be rationalized with the influence of bots. And even Time and Huffington Post is reproducing that. But sorry, no. Just by generating hashtags, you don't get votes for that. But here comes the core of all, the Southern California Indiana project. That's the paper, Social Bot Distorted, the 2016 US presidential election online discussion. It's by Alessandro Bessi and Emilio Ferrara. I'm not sure if you know Emilio Ferrara. You probably know him from the movie The Rise of the Social Bots. And in his paper, the core technology they're using for detecting bots is the botometer, also known as bot or not, they renamed it. And the idea of the botometer is that they basically had two lists. One is as training data. One is a list of social bots, and the other list is a list of humans. And then they fetched the metadata from Twitter and put it into a machine learning algorithm that then automatically has a high accuracy to distinguish between bots and humans. That sounds like a promising approach. Use machine learning to decide based on metadata if in a Twitter account is a bot or a human. But this system has problems. Actually, in the paper itself, there are two main problems. First of all, you need a list of social bots. How do you get a list of social bots if you don't have a detection method yet, because you're trying to build one with botometer? So you need something that you think that might be social bots. And what they did is basically just relabeled a data set of another research team. What they found was content polluters. They're not sure either if they are bots or just humans or spam accounts or whatever, but the botometer is trained on something like spam accounts. So maybe it's not a bot detection algorithm, it's maybe a spam account detection, and they never noticed. And the second problem is you want to test your algorithm if it works or not. And the worst thing you can do is to test your algorithm on your training data. That every data scientist don't do that, especially if you have highly biased training data because you selected a group of perfect bots and a group of perfect humans. It's basically as if you have a machine learning algorithm and you trained it on whether it's something is a picture of a cat or a picture of a tree, and then you find out, oh, this algorithm can perfectly detect if this is a picture of a cat or a tree, and then you give them a picture of an elephant, and the algorithm don't know what to do. So that's the problem of botometer. You don't know what the botometer will do if it sees new accounts that have metadata that it has never seen before. So having a high accuracy on your training data doesn't work. You have to verify it in the wild. And they never did that. But the good thing is the botometer is online. You can test it there, and you can test the false positive rate. And the easiest way of testing the false positive rate is to use a group of perfect, a list, for example, a list of Twitter accounts where you know that everyone is a human being, and test the botometer on it. And I did it on the US Congress. And the result is that almost half of the US Congress are social bots. And this is bad. This is really, really bad. If you have a false positive rate of almost or over 40%, well, that's almost like flipping a coin, yeah, and being wrong half of the time. So according to the botometer, over 50% of US Congress members are social bots. And I guess that a lot of Congress members read the article and no one of them thought that maybe the botometer is also claiming that they are social bots. So here's a comparison of the social bot shares according to the different methods. So US election, the Comprop Oxford project found 0.1% bot share. I think it's almost 4 million Twitter accounts, and they found 4,000 of them. So it's 1,000th. And the US election discussion, botometer found 14%, but the same system on the US Congress is 40%. So the social bot share is in the US Congress higher than in the public during the US election. And this is bad. This is a really, really bad result. It's actually a PR disaster. So that's why we contacted botometer. We didn't get a response. The only response we got so far is a tweet. Sadly, our research project and social bot detection tool botometer are under attack by some German academic trolls, including data journalist Michael and Dr. Florian Galwitz. He's a professor of computer science here in Germany. He's an expert on pattern recognition and deep learning, so he knows he can read these papers and find the errors. So here are my questions to Emilio Ferrara and Alessandro Flamini. Did your algorithm estimates during the US election that 14% of the accounts involved were social bots? And did the same algorithm classifies 40% of the US Congress as social bots? And the third one, and I think that's the most important, don't you think this false positive rate is a problem because your research had national and international political consequences? So this could be a big PR disaster. So magically, in 2018, the botometer got an update, and now the US Congress is magically bot-free. If you know how the algorithm works, it'd be quite easy to just put the US Congress on the whitelist. But then you didn't improve your method. That's not a fix. It's just hiding the fact that you really screwed up. And they can't put every Twitter list onto a whitelist. So you can still find many other lists of human beings that the botometer is not able to identify them. So for example, from 65 Nobel Prize winners, 12% are bots. 3,137 female directors, 13% are bots. From the NASA accounts, 14% are bots, a lot of astronauts. Yeah, and here's some more. Reuters journalist, UN women's staff, the German news agency, DPA, and also the Federal Parliament of Bavaria, 30% are bots. And just to be sure, you can check the other side. There's a bot wiki where I could find 937 bots. And according to botometer, 60% are humans. So the botometer fails in both directions. It can't detect reliably humans, and it can't detect reliably bots. And the problem is that a lot of researchers believe that the botometer is a scientific tool because it comes out of a scientific paper, but it's not true. It's not a scientific tool. You actually have to prove that it's scientifically correct. Botometer is bullshit. And if you want to read it in more detail without any swear words, I can recommend you Adrian Raufleich and Jonas Kaisers. They wrote a great paper about the false positive problem of automatic bot detection, specifically the botometer. You can see and read more in the details. They have a great experiment on measuring the accuracy of botometer. So in the end, the three papers where we based on the narrative that social bots had influenced the US election are all three bullshit. Sorry to say that, but none of them has proven that they have found social bots. None of them has proven any kind of malicious interference, and none of them is scientifically reproducible, and that's important. That's the core idea of science. It has to be scientifically reproducible. Others should be able to use the same data and the same code and get the same results. Neither data nor code is available. It's a closed source, or, well, at least it is not published. And all of them have received a very large media coverage, probably because, the narrative of a Terminator in social media, it's something that people like. Usually when I talk to other people, so for example, I met members of parliaments here in Germany, other journalists, NGO scientists, there's a lot of discussion about social bots here in Germany, how reliable the research is. I got a lot of questions, so I'm pushing here some kind of an FAQ in between. One of the typical questions is, but many Trump followers are social bots because they're egg accounts without profile pictures. But the problem is, no, they're not social bots. Many new users are passive and use Twitter like a feed reader. And especially if you just join Twitter, you're new, you didn't even have time to put up a profile picture. And if you're passive and just want to follow, for example, Donald Trump because his tweets got a lot of media coverage, therefore they have no tweets, no pictures, and no followers. They just use it as passive users. Because having an egg account is not a bot criterion. This is normal human behavior. Another question I sometimes get is, but a friend of mine now is a guy who said that he can influence election with social bots. That's, First of all, that's not a question, that's a comment. And second, the brother-in-law of my dentist says that this guy is a liar. Seriously, what we need in the discussion is not gut feelings or rumors, or I know someone who heard something. We need facts. And especially if we believe that social bots are pushing society to the limits or whatever, then we need facts. And this is not a fact. But didn't Twitter admit that there are millions of social bots on the platform and is deleting them? And the answer is no. The New York Times, for example, is a social bot and will not be deleted, hopefully. Twitter announced that they are fighting malicious activities like spam, fake accounts, or artificial amplification, but they are not fighting automation. And I want to make clear, as a journalist, journalists should check the accuracy of their quotes. A lot of journalists are not quoting Twitter correctly. If Twitter is talking about spam and the journalist quoting that as social bots, then it's simply not true. There are millions of very young accounts like Mark or Megan, Mike, and then an 8-digit number. Of course, these are social bots. And now this is the default pattern for new Twitter account names. And if you don't believe me, create a new account and see for yourself. That's actually, I'm not sure when they introduced that, but if you create a new Twitter account, you automatically get this kind of account. It's the first name and then 8 random digits. So this is also not a bot criterion. This is normal human behavior. And there are millions of social bot accounts out there, but you can't see them because they look and act exactly like people. So this is the Terminator argument. But people who believe that also believe that billions of reptiloids out there, but you can't see them because they look and act exactly like people. Come on, so the idea that the social bots are so perfectly human is a conspiracy theory. And also, by the way, if bots behave exactly like humans, then science doesn't work anymore, because then the paper, like just counting how often they tweet, is not a reliable way of detecting them. Yeah? So you created a level of sophistication where science can't work anymore. And this is really annoying to me that I'm having again and again always the same questions. So more social bots want you to smoke cigarettes, want you to smoke. Okay, yeah. I didn't understand my own slide. So, for example, here is, and that's really hurting to me, an article from Scientific American. Social media bots deceive e-cigarettes users. So yeah, and this is the paper. And the core of the paper is, in order to distinguish between human users and social bots, bot or not algorithm, so the Ackerbotometer is used. And we know that it's bullshit, that this algorithm is not able to reliably detect humans or bots. So, for example, if an astronaut would, for example, talk about e-cigarettes, then you would call that a social bot. But social bots deny climate change. BBC talked about that. Study finds quarter of climate change tweets from bots. That's work. I'm not sure from which one it is. From the Brown University, yeah. Thomas Marlowe. But the core of the paper is also we use the machine learning algorithm Botometer, and we know that is bullshit. Climate change, no. It was about the coronavirus, that bots trying to distort the discussion about corona and that America should reopen. And now we have a new player I've never heard before. Kathleen Carley from the Carnegie Mellon University is based on the press release. So I tried to research what is the scientific paper to look what is the algorithm, what is the method of actually detecting bots and finding the influence. And the interesting thing is, nope, there's no scientific paper. It's just claims and no proof. And what about social bots and Black Lives Matters? Well, researchers, 1 in 3 accounts tweeting about Black Lives Matter protests are guaranteed to be bots. And the author is Kathleen Carley again. Scientific paper? Nope, just claims, no proof. I've read social bot research papers for the last 4 years, and my summary is social bot research is a disaster. Every single paper I looked at it deeper fell apart. And the problem is that it has real-life impact. And to show you that, I will point you to a story. I'm not sure if you noticed that. I think there are more, but here's one from the EU copyright reform from last year. So basically, the European Union wanted to update the copyright in Europe, and one of their ideas is to enforce YouTube, Facebook, and other platforms to install upload filters. So whenever you upload a picture or video, an algorithm will decide if this is a copyright infringement or not. So even if the algorithm doesn't know if it's satire or not. So a lot of NGOs put up websites, Save Your Internet, Pledge 2020, 10,000 emails and calls to the MEPs were sent. And one of the MEPs from the Conservative Party said that, I get thousands of emails from different Gmail accounts, but all of them have the same content. Well, that can only be a Google bot attack. So now there was a narrative that all the protesters are actually not humans, that they are just bots. So hundred thousands of people go to the streets and chanting, "Wir sind keine bots, we are not bots." And there was even a music video, "We are not the bots." The bot narrative is just a new way of dehumanizing opposition. Yeah, that's a problem. And I think Twitter itself put it in a good way, or explained it good. The binary judgment of who's a bot or not has real potential to poison our public discourse, particularly when they're pushed out through the media. And I want to add something. There are proprietary, closed source, and unscientific algorithms that decide which social movement is legitimate and which one is not. I think that this is a new and dangerous dystopia, and we have to fix that. And here in Germany, we have a lot of discussions around that. There's more and more scientists publicly saying, okay, we have to be really careful about these social bot studies. For example, the Science Media Center here in Germany recommends, or has a handout for the journalists saying, okay, if they have a social bot research paper, just be careful. But the problem is, and I want to say it clearly, more and more bullshit is coming from universities of the United States. And we always have to fight that. So here is the thing that I'm begging you for. Please start a debate on the scientific validity of social bot research in the United States. It would really help us, because I think that this is hurtful. So I was a little bit faster, maybe thanks to the energy drink. And I have to thank you all for helping us. People are not bots. And on the bottom, you can see the link to the page where we'll put up all the data and slides. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. I think that was a great introduction to the topic for everyone. And I think one of the things we've seen a lot in the Q&A here, there are some questions we'll get to in a minute, but there was a sentiment raised, which I'll just read out what was written. I think it's fair to say that I disagree with this speaker. I think automated accounts run by powerful groups can affect debates. That said, I really appreciate his taking the piss out of shoddy research and journalism. And I think that all of us should be able to agree with the second part of that sentiment at least. So without further ado, I'm going to take questions that are posted in the Matrix chat. If you're not in there, go in there, put your question into the Q&A area there. But first of all, we have a question. Do you have any thoughts, Michael, on verified accounts and whether you think that social bots should be identified?
Can you repeat that? Just had an audio problem.
Sure, yeah, of course. So I think there's two parts to the question, right? It's asking about the classification, the identification of accounts by Twitter. And so whether they're identified as verified, whether they're your average common or garden account, whether they're flagging them as social bots. Do you have any thoughts about what that might mean and what might be necessary for that?
So I'm not sure what Twitter is actually doing. I'm not working there. I've no connections to them. But I know at least that, for example, the verified flag is a process that you can't circumvent in a way. For example, creating 100,000 verified social bots. That's, as far as I understand it, not possible. So that's one of the things that I find quite interesting, that none of the scientific papers I found so far actually looked at if an account is verified or not. Usually there are companies or people who probably had a video call with Twitter to ensure that they're human beings, but no one is actually checking that. And I could find a very a lot of verified accounts that were categorized as social bots and probably influential to, for example, the elections.
Okay, thank you. The next question we have, what is the difference between social bots and artificial amplification? Because artificial amplification of trends sounds like an effort to manipulate political discourse. And if it's automated, then it sounds like social bots being used to affect debates.
Well,
so I guess the question is, where is the line between social bots and people?
Yeah, in theory, of course I can buy fake followers, and actually I did. I bought fake followers for a second account and analyzed them, what are the companies behind them, and so on. And of course, you can fake the number of followers, you can fake the number of likes or retweets or push a hashtag. But the question is, are, for example, trending hashtags core element of our public discussion? I would never check the trending hashtags to find out to which party or president I should vote for. I don't understand that. So, and having a lot of likes, for example, is something you can usually see for example, right-wing radicals. They're jumping on a specific topic and shitstorming and stuff like that. So the question is Twitter or general social media a good platform for measuring the quality of public discussion? I don't think so that it's a good idea, and I know that General is still looking at that. What is an hashtag important, or how many followers a specific politician has? So that's about amplification. But to put in perspective to this talk, what I saw a lot of times was that people try to amplify. So, for example, people used one hashtag 20 times in one tweet and retweeted it and pushed it again because they want to have a specific hashtag. And if you talk to the people, you find out that they're afraid of migration or whatever, conspiracy or whatever, and they want to show the public that here's a real danger, and that's why they're trying to push hashtags. But they don't do it automatically; they do it manually. And if you have thousands of followers of a conspiracy theory, they can be generated quite momentum. But this is not artificial amplification. That's it's not automated. It's still artificial, of course. Yeah. I'm not sure if I answered the question. I almost forgot it, I think.
I think you definitely touched on a lot of the topics there. So let me give you the next question. There was an early Twitter bot that would retweet any tweet that it detected to have been deleted by a predefined list of politicians' Twitter accounts.
Yeah.
Twitter decided to pull that bot's account, claiming that even deleting a tweet was free speech. What do you think of that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it was a project from the Netherlands. At least I knew that one called Politwhoops. And it's a good point. If you, for example, tweeting something when you're really drunk and you want to delete it next day, I'm deleting tweets too, because later I noticed, okay, not from every context is that a good idea to say it in that way. And yeah, of course, somebody else could just generate screenshots of that. So the question is, how we want to talk on this public platform, and it could be approached from Twitter to do that. If you think personally is this a good idea or not, that's your decision.
Okay, you touched on Trump at the start of your slides, at the start of your talk. We have a question here. Did anti-Trump sentiment allow for otherwise perhaps good researchers to poison their data with bad data? I.e., since researchers could not believe that Trump could win, they were more easily allowing themselves to use bad data.
I'm not sure about that. Of course, I think almost every research group have to know use hashtags before the beginning, so there will always be a bias in the research. That's in general problem of research, that there's always a bias. That's why you want to have it reproducible, that other scientists with other biases might come to different conclusions. But the thing that that the question touches, and I think that is more important, is that the voting result was quite surprising. It was nobody would bet on that Donald Trump would win. Everybody thought it would be Hillary Clinton. New York Times, all the data journalists, all made this interactive visualizations, all come to the same conclusion. And that was the same thing was true during the Brexit referendum. So in 2016, in just a few months, we have two major events that were astonishing and frightening even for some. And we need an explanation for that. And there was an explanation from totally unknown social bot scientists that, okay, the social bots manipulate the public. I think that is the most important reason why so many journalistic news media talked about social bots after the US election, because we couldn't find any other good answers for that. This does not answer your question, but I just want to mention that might be bias in the reporting about, for example, social bots.
Thanks, Michael. And we have another question here which maybe plays into that as well, talking about the shallowness of American electoral politics. The question is, to what extent do you think this may be a deliberate effort to keep people from more radical politics with specific goals? And does it matter if it's deliberate or not?
One thing that I learned as a journalist and as a scientist is to never think about what could be possibly the motivation if somebody's doing that way or not that way. It's because I couldn't neither prove it or the other person can't disprove it, so I don't think about the motivation. So I can't answer the question.
Fair enough. We have a question that may play into one you've already answered, but let's see if you want to give an answer on this one. Do you count paid posters such as China's 50 Cent Party as bots, or do you consider them something else?
Yeah, well, that would be like sock puppets, or that I mentioned in the beginning of the talk. Yeah, that's a problem. And the question, maybe just if you talk about if something is a bot or not, is maybe not the good approach. Maybe we should think about what is malicious activity or whatnot. And specifically, if you have a account and you don't know if it's automated, or for example, a Chinese person is behind it, is it really important who's behind it, or is it enough to just look at the malicious activity? So maybe that's a thing we should focus on. I believe that it will be harder and harder to actually figure out if someone. I think that the amount of data you can get off a Twitter account is not good enough to really detect social bots. So that's why almost probably every social bot paper is failing on that.
Okay. The next question we have has a shout out for SkyTalk, so thank you to whoever wrote that. There's been some wonderful bot research I've seen presented at SkyTalks and other US-based conferences featuring researchers based in North America. Most of the research presented was the result of AI researchers and data scientists' personal works, rather than something sponsored by larger organizations. What role do you think funding plays in bot research in the US compared to elsewhere in the world?
I don't know, and I hope that doesn't play any role. Scientists and journalists should always be as objective as possible. You probably get funding for having a specific area. I think we can see here another effect, that a lot of social bot researchers, when they said, okay, social bots are the new big dangerous dystopia that's coming up, that has a side effect that their institute probably gets more money because they're the only ones who can actually research that. So that maybe creates a bias. So the dependence on third-party money.
So you're saying, though, that you don't think that there are research organizations that explicitly come up to a conclusion that is in line with the funding that they're receiving?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I saw a lot of research done by, for example, companies saying, so for example, here's a company in Germany They want to fight bots. I don't remember the name. So whatever they publish has to be in the area of that social bots exist and that they're a big threat, because if they say a different thing, they will threaten their own business model. So there's a lot of bias in there. And I hope that if the research would be more reproducible, that we can fact check the science.
Okay, Michael, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. I have to thank you for the invitation. So thank you and bye.